Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Self-Publishing Advice Conference. I'm here with Dean Wesley Smith. Dean, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. Could you first of all tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and your books?
Well, I've sold my first short story in 1974. I am frighteningly that old. And I have sold about 200 novels. Sold my first one in 87. It took a while from the first short story to the first novel. But about 200 books. I'm very prolific. I worked in traditional publishing a lot of media books. I'm probably known by a lot of people as a Star Trek writer. I wrote Men in Black, a lot of Spider-Man and X-Men and things like that. And then in the last decade or so, I've been, an indie published writer, not working with traditional at all anymore. So the last 100 novels have been indie published. The 100 and some novels before that were all traditionally published. So I've been in both sides of the world now and write just about everything.
Amazing. I knew you were prolific, and I knew that you'd done lots in kind of the film and book and the Star Trek stuff, but I did not know that you'd written Men in Black. That is amazing.
Yeah, I did a couple of those and a lot of other things, a lot of gaming novels, a lot of other stuff. Wrote for Paramount Studios, in Star Trek and different things like that. Done
amazing.
Just about everything. When you've been around for 40 years, you get a chance to do just about everything.
So we're here to talk about the concept of the Magic Bakery and how indie authors can take full advantage of the whole plethora of their rights. I wondered, for everybody who doesn't know, kind of the analogy of the Magic Bakery, if you could explain the concept and what it means for an indie author.
Sure. It actually has a couple different reasons and values to authors to help us visualize what we're doing as writers, besides making up stories and then wondering what to do with them. The aspect of licensing, we don't sell copyright, we license copyright. I'm always on a soapbox to try to get writers to understand and learn copyright. It's actually moderately easy compared to the other parts of what's called intellectual property, or IP. This is pretty much worldwide thing. It is a all the rules of the different countries around the planet, by and large, follow the same principles. And for copyright, pretty much every country on the planet signed the Berne Convention, which keeps all of our rules consistent and everything else. Copyright is what you create when you finish a story. It's that simple. And that's what we license out to people. We don't sell copyright, we license it. And the Magic Bakery is twofold. It is try to get writers to understand, first off, business. For example, one of the ways this metaphor works is a writer who's just finished their first or second novel, and then is all bummed that nothing's selling. They're not selling enough, and they're, I don't know what to do, and I should, and I try to, the Magic Bakery helps put that in perspective. Imagine if you're a customer and you walk into a bakery and there's one cupcake sitting on a shelf, just one. All the other shelves are completely empty around that person. If that's the case, as a customer, you turn around and leave because there's only one product or two products sitting there. There's nothing. It's just empty shelves. And as a customer, we all go, oh, and walk out. Well, that's what a beginning writer is you have a store. Your writing is a store, and you're selling to customers, but you've only got one or two products. So why do you think you should sell a lot? You don't. That's the bottom line. Unless you get really, really, lottery level lucky, you don't sell hardly anything in your first. You have to keep producing. You have to keep filling the shelves full of product, okay, with each book and each story being another product on the shelf. So that's one way the metaphor works. The other way is that copyright is magic. It is truly, truly magical. because for example, think of each piece of copyright that you have as a pie. And so you take a slice of the pie, I'll say it's a short story. So you created this pie, this short story, and you can sell, I use the term, you can license to like a regular magazine, something along the lines of first serial rights. So you take that little slice of pie out, but it's still there because the serial rights can still be licensed. You just can't license the first part of it, but you can license all the rest. So, for example, when we put a story up on Amazon to license, we license it to Amazon, and then they license it to their users. That's another thing that people don't know. You as a user of an electronic book, don't own that electronic book. Amazon or Kobo or whatever, they can pull it back at any given point. You are licensing that book from them. Well, we license it to Amazon. So what happens when Amazon then licenses it out to one? Does that take that piece out of your pie? No. You can license it over and over and over and over and over again. Unlike a regular pie where you take the slice out, it's gone. Somebody eats it and it's gone. You take a slice out of a copyright pie, it's still there. Or say you license it for a 7-year thing like to Audible or something, you license the Audible rights out of the pie, the Audible slice. Well, in 7 years, that slice appears back in your pie, just like it never left. And so that's the magic of this Magic Bakery, is trying to get people to understand, writers to understand that copyright truly is magic once you understand it, and you can make a lot of money from it. But you got to fill your shelves first, too.
Yeah. And I suppose that's especially for indie authors, because often with traditional contracts, you know how you were saying for indies, we retain that piece of pie. As a traditional author, I'm guessing
you lose everything.
Right.
That's why I would never write for traditional again, because traditional companies, for accounting reasons, not for any other reason, but accounting reasons, because copyright, intellectual property, has an enormous value to corporations, to their bottom lines. And so the aspect of, that's why they buy all rights for the life of the copyright. You truly are losing control. Here's the Magic Bakery metaphor. Someone walks into your bakery, here's your pie that you've got there that you've spent all this time baking and putting together, and it's magic. And if you were indie, you could license it out, all kinds of parts. They pick up the entire pie and go out the door with it. That's what traditional does. You lose control of the pie, you lose control of everything in it, and you make very little money. Where in long term, if you know what you're doing, you can keep licensing off these slices that they don't really disappear and make far, far, far more money. By doing it yourself.
And I think that's probably, hopefully a message that lots of our kind of self-published authors and indie authors are all, really open to hearing, I hope.
That's the hope is, I made a living at traditional publishing from 1987 until 2000 and something. Sold a lot of books, over 106 is the last ones I can count, because I wrote under a lot of pen names too. I make far, far, far more money as an indie writer. I wish, and I will be able, because of American copyright law, in 35 years after publication date, or after contract date with those earlier books, I can get them all back. And so I will be, because the years go by fairly quickly, some of these are now in the window, I can get some of these early books back. Even though I basically gave them the pie and said, leave the bakery, and they did, I will be able to retrieve that pie back into the bakery. But it's American copyright law. It's not an international law. It's a 35-year reversion law.
So I think this concept, especially for kind of writers who are coming through, maybe they've got several books but haven't really thought about what this might mean for them or how they can kind of capitalize on it. And obviously when we're talking about licensing, there are so many different areas that somebody could license, from, merchandise to audio to translation. So where should somebody who's starting to look at this really focus their time in order to kind of get the best benefit from their magic bakery?
Well, this is the fascinating thing about what's going on now, because back when in traditional publishing, when that was the only option, writers never thought about all this licensing that we could do out to so many different areas. We never thought about it. It never crossed our minds because we had given the entire pie to the traditional publisher. It was up to them to do it, and then they didn't, by and large, almost none. And when you start thinking about licensing, I mean, just simply translation rights are a license to get your stories into other languages and then your native language. What occurred with the indie movement, and now that the indie movement is stabilized and solid, and there's lots and lots of people out there that are doing fine, that are, we're not out there, being flashy like the 20 to 50K people are and all that, and bragging about how much money we're making or all that. But, Chris and I have 5 employees in our publishing company, and so we do just fine on all of that. And we have a big office up in Oregon, and it's startling the amount of money that we can license out. But what you have to think about, and what we just did, is we're now living in Vegas. Chris and I live in Vegas. Christine Catherine Rush, the writer, is my wife. We live in Vegas. And in this last May, we went to the licensing expo, and there are 4 or 5 of these around the world. They're huge. The one here in Las Vegas was the largest. This thing makes any other convention I'd ever been to look tiny by comparison, just tiny. It's huge. And walking around in there, I started to get a scale of the licensing possibilities. And literally what I've come to, and I'm doing some teaching online on our online stuff to try to let people write along with me as Chris and I learn this also, this is an area that is limited only by our own imaginations. And now we're fiction writers, so we have good imaginations. And yet every day, literally every day coming up, we will go, oh, we could do that. Or, oh, we could do that. And so the biggest roadblock, of course, for writers is how do you get from, oh, I've got this cool short story that could be a fun license. How do you move it into the business part of licensing? And that is the roadblock. For example, most indie writers don't think that they can get their books into bookstores. They just don't think that. Even though that is a total myth. Traditional publishing, I call it fairy dust. They don't have fairy dust that they can sprinkle on a book and make it automatically appear in a bookstore. It doesn't work that way. They have a system that they go through to get the book from the traditional publisher into a bookstore. Well, we as indie writers with our publishing companies can do exactly the same system if we want to. There is no magic anything. But it takes knowledge and some work along the way and some types of things. That's the way it is with all of this. For example, you want to do a hardback of your newest book. You have to learn how to do dust jackets. You have to go to Ingram Sparks. They're the best one at the moment, far and away the best, because they have a good distribution, the Ingram's distribution system, which is worldwide. And so you go to Ingram Sparks, you lay out the hardback, you put it in. That all is a little bit of a learning curve. But then what happens is they print it and they distribute it. So now you've got a hardback license. You've licensed your book out hardback, and people can buy the hardback as well as the trade paper, as well as the electronic, as well as the audio. That's a different form of license. So you start thinking about just the basic of book publishing. And then you go, well, wait a minute, shouldn't there be T-shirt distribution systems? Well, of course there are. Okay, that means you have only art for your book. That's a key element. Before you can put your art and your book on a T-shirt, you have to license from the artist. So you have to license in, as Chris calls it. And then you say, okay, now I've got control of this art for T-shirts. I will go and find a company that can do T-shirts and put it through the T-shirt distribution system, just like you put it through the hardback distribution system. It's exactly the same. You can do that with things like coins, chips, cups, mugs, dishes, anything that you can imagine. There's a distribution system out there to get that into. And all you have to do is just do the research and find it. Just like if you say, I want my books in bookstores, well, then go do the research and find the channels that you can put your book in to get it into the bookstores. It really is that simple. But indie writers, we were writers to begin with, a lot of us from traditional, and it never occurred to us. The newer indies coming in, this should be part of what they're thinking. The indie writers need to be going not necessarily to a Dragon Con or to a World Science Fiction Convention or things like that. They need to be going to the licensing expos and making contact at the licensing conventions to find out, to get their favorite character made into a mechanical toy and put into the toy distribution network. It takes learning curves on all of them, but it's completely doable. Completely.
And so as part of the licensings, obviously there's, the indies can do it and have full control, and they can do the research and kind of put their, whether it be the paperback and hardback into the bookstores, or whether it be, licensing your own merch. But particularly for things like translation rights, where often you're translating into a language that is not your own, you might not speak it, there might be contractual nuances. Do you recommend that indies should look for agents? Do you think it's still viable to do it by yourself? Kind of particularly in that area, do you or even, overseas publishers, where do you kind of, what do you think indies should do in that kind of arena?
I believe in going to the people who are good at what they do. And American traditional publishing is the worst. It is the worst. The big five is what they call them. They're horrid. But in other language publishers, they tend to be very smart and very focused. They're basically small presses. WMG Publishing, Chris and I's publishing house, is about the size of Bain Books or Daw Books or stuff like that. We are a mid-range publisher. Most of the translation publishers in Germany or Spain or Portugal or wherever are smaller publishers. They know what they're doing, they're good at what they do, and their contracts are reasonable. They will take it for only what they need, like Spanish translation rights, and they will take it only for a set number of time, for a set amount of money, and then it will basically stop. And so they're only taking a tiny slice for a small period of time, and then it ends and comes back to you. So I would for translation rights, I would go directly to the publishers. You can find these publishers. Again, it takes a little bit of research, but it's not hard in this modern world of Google and the internet. Agents are scams these days. I'm going to say that right out there. They are there to take your money. You can do exactly what they can do. They have no magic fairy dust any more than anybody else. They are not, especially in the United States, they are not lawyers. So therefore they are not legally allowed to even negotiate a contract for you. It takes a lawyer. So by them simply negotiating a contract for you, they're breaking the law in the United States. The state of New York and a couple of the other states here in the country are starting to have movements to crack down on these agents. California already has, in some ways, for the movie industry and things like that. You don't go to a Hollywood agent anymore. That shows how really stupid you are. If you go to a Hollywood agent, you go to managers and other people that can actually, and lawyers. Chris and I haven't had an agent for, I'll tell you, we started making a lot of money the minute we got rid of our agents. That was 15, 18 years ago now. Because we didn't realize what they were blocking, how much they were stealing from us. I mean, total theft. We threatened to audit our agent towards the end, and they just kicked us loose and reverted all of our books, took themselves off of all of our contracts because they didn't want us to audit them. You don't need an agent for anything in 2019, 2020. You just flat don't need an agent. You can do it all yourself. It's, in fact, it's much better. You're in better control. Why put someone else and give somebody else money in the middle? So go direct. Go to direct on all of this.
Thinking about that then, and the fact that you've just kind of mentioned an area where indies should be aware of, are there any other mistakes or things that we should learn from, or areas that we should really avoid, or kind of lessons learnt in the rights licensing kind of arena? Any watchdog moments, I suppose?
Yeah, there's a couple that Chris and I see a lot, because we work with a lot of writers with the different teaching we do and things along those lines. And people write us for, basically opinions.
Mm-hmm.
With other writers, we're not afraid to share opinions. The thing I think the most is business. Understanding copyright. Writers will say, well, I'm going to get around to that. I'm going to learn copyright. And it's not something you can learn overnight. It's very, very easy to learn, but it takes a little bit of time to understand it. You got to pay attention to it. So the first thing is not understanding copyright. It's just assuming that I could be making $500,000 a year, but if I don't understand copyright, I'm probably going to make $50,000 a year. That's the difference in just simply understanding copyright and understanding licensing. When you're too lazy as a writer to go learn copyright, all you're doing is saying, well, I don't want all that money. That's what you're doing. And it's head shaking and mind numbing to me that writers do this. But almost every writer I know does it. I know writers that have been selling books to traditional publishing for 30 years, friends of mine that came in at the same time I did, and they don't know anything about copyright. It just never occurs to them, because they just sell all rights and be done and write the next book, and I don't care, and they make very little money anymore. They're all working day jobs, they're all getting GoFundMe things because they got a medical issue or something else. And I'm like, guys, you could be so rich, and just by simply understanding copyright. The second thing is understand licensing, which goes hand in hand with copyright. And then the third thing is by and large, understand business. We are business people. We have to be. And the writer who says, oh, I don't know anything about business, I don't want to learn business. Well, I just say wave goodbye. You'll be gone in a few years, because someone will come in and take advantage of you. You don't know business, and you'll get discouraged, and then it'll get into your writing, and that'll be the end of it. You'll stop writing. You'll just grind down and stop and go do something else. And that's sad. That's sad. So the three things that I'd say are the biggest things I see in indie publishing is not learning business, not understanding basic business. I mean, people down on, that have shops down on Main Street or down on a street corner or have a little restaurant somewhere that has 20 tables, they know more about business than most writers. And we're international business people. We don't work on a corner on a small town somewhere. We function internationally. So we should be better at business than somebody who has a little restaurant on a corner in a small town. And people don't spend any time. Think about it this way. If you wanted to be a lawyer, you would go to all these years of school, college and law school and everything else, just so you could practice law in some small town somewhere. Well, yet writers won't spend that amount of time to learn how to be an internationally known and selling writer. Man, that's the sad thing. It's just like, I can spend 20 minutes a day at this and become internationally known. No, you can't. The bottom line is this takes work, this takes effort, this takes consistency, and it takes learning. Learn copyright, learn licensing, and learn business. 3 things.
And craft. Don't forget craft. Learn craft too.
You have to keep craft, but I'm assuming that if you're a writer, the writers who, this is a truism I've watched over the years. The writers who think they know craft, they get to the point and go, okay, I've got it. They're gone in a couple of years. They're just gone. If you don't continuously learn craft, that's automatic. because you can't see the top of this thing. I've been focusing on learning craft for 40 years, and I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And every time I go, oh, that's cool, and I see the next level, I see that there's levels still above that I don't even know. And people who will read something like a Patterson and put Patterson down, or read a King and go, oh, I don't like how, or read Kuntz, or read Nora Roberts, or Danielle Steele, or all these other internationally top-selling writers, and think, oh, they can't write. Well, they're idiots when they think that, because those people are pulling in millions of readers. They are the best at writing, at storytelling. And, so you should study those people to see what the heck they're doing. And then you might start seeing the levels that they're working on. They're working on levels that are, I call stage 4 levels, way up, way high. And so, yeah, learn craft. That's the 4th thing. You're right.
Yeah.
I just assumed that one, because those people who don't keep learning craft are soon gone.
Yeah.
The industry goes right by them.
When, I suppose, is the next question. Obviously, as indies, we have the ability to choose when we do things, if we do things, and what things we don't want to do. But I think there is probably a point at which these things become a bit more viable. You've already alluded to the need to have a rather full bakery. So when should an indie author start to think about this kind of stuff? Obviously, we can do learning from the start, but when can we really, when is optimal to start trying to capitalize on some of these opportunities?
Day one.
Okay.
If you're writing a novel right now, spend a little time learning copyright as you go along. Spend a little time learning publishing, learning business, just a little here and there. Pay attention to articles you read. Pay attention to, start getting a group of blogs and websites and podcasts and things like that that you go to. You don't have to go to them every day. Check in once a week. My wife has a business blog that she does one day a week. Check in with that every couple of weeks and get caught up a little bit right from day one. Because what will happen is, as you learn your craft, you're not going to write your best book on your first book, but you still need to publish it. You need to do the best you can and publish it and get done, and then write the next book and publish it and leave the first one alone. Just let it be there. And then you'll slowly start building up inventory. As you build up this inventory, you should also be building up your business knowledge on the other side, your copyright knowledge on the other side, and your licensing knowledge. So you do it all at the same time. As you build your craft, build your business at the same time. And the business side of it is just here and there, read an article, get some blogs, start just picking at it, and make it I got to do this regularly. Oh my, it's been weeks since I've been back to so-and-so's blog. I better get back, follow Joanna Penn's podcast, things like that. And then take it all with a grain of salt, including what I'm saying. Everybody, you always take that wouldn't work for me. But ask yourself why it wouldn't work for you. Well, if you're like, well, I want to be taken care of, I want someone to do that for me. The minute you hear yourself say, I want someone to do that for you, think, I want some scammer to take care of me. And that's what's going to happen. You've got to know it yourself. You got to know it better than anybody you hired to do it. So do your own covers, learn that. Everything's a learning curve early on. It's all overwhelming. It seems like it's too much until you go and learn it. And then it's not so much. Then it becomes something you just do. And that's the key. So you got to learn it right from day one. You got to start learning. And don't let it overwhelm you. Just do it a little piece at a time.
So do you think there are any things like rights translations and, licensing for game characters or whatever? Is there a level at which those licensing opportunities become more feasible? Sort of, do you have to sell a certain number of books? Do you have to, or could somebody just with one book, have they would have as much chance as somebody?
Yeah, it's not the number of books.
Okay.
It's not the number of sales. It's the product itself.
Okay.
So yeah, here's how you have to think about it, though, is that your first book, there's almost no chance that it will be the product. Okay. What the product that might get licensed and make you a lot of money and make movies out of it and translation rights in 30 different countries and all of that sort of stuff might be your 37th novel. But you won't know that until you've written the 37th novel. See, that's the key, is that every product is independent and stands alone. So if you think, well, I've written a book, I should, well, it might be, you might hit the lottery and get lucky. Yeah, there are writers once in a while that do that. I call that lottery. If you're making a lot of money off your first 10 novels, you're just lottery. That's all it is. Because chances are it's novel number 35, and then it's novel number 61, and then it's novel number, and that sounds overwhelming early on because people make novels into these big, important things. They're not. They're just they're a longer story is all they are. You're just telling stories. And so you don't know until you get there. Until you write it and then you go, oh, okay. And then someone says, oh, I really like that. Let's go here. And someone else, and that's why you've got to be wide with your distribution too. You can't be a Kindle Select. You got to be super wide so that someone in Spain picks it up and goes, that would make a good movie. And they go from there. Because, most of the movie money these days is international. And most movies are being made international. In fact, Chris and I went to a movie last night called Angel is something.
Fallen.
It's one of the, Angel has Fallen. Yeah, It's White House, the President of the United States and all that. And the whole thing's about the President of the United States and Secret Service, right? It was filmed in Bulgaria and Montreal. And, there literally was zero American money in that movie, totally. Yet it was nothing was even filmed in the United States at all. It was all filmed in Bulgaria and other places like that. And that's where all the money came from, too. Because Chris and I sit and watch all of the credits at the end. If writers are not sitting and watching the credits at the end, if they're just getting up and thinking, oh, that's the end of it, they're losing all this learning at the end. It's massive amount of learning. Chris and I still sit through every credit, and boy, that was an eye-opener last night. Here's this very American movie, very American topic, and there wasn't 1 ounce of it that was paid for or filmed in the United States. Nothing, and so you just kind of get through this stuff and start learning it and realize, oh, wow, these are all international. Everything's international these days, and that's the way it should be. And as soon as things level on the international front in Great Britain and in this country, all the crazy stuff that's happening in both countries right now, which we will get through these times, then it'll be even more open. And so that's the craziness at the moment.
Okay, so last question. To a new writer coming in, and I guess you've kind of alluded to some of this earlier, but to a new writer coming in, looking at this big magic bakery and the licensing and all of the opportunities, what would you say to somebody who still wants to be here in 30 years writing?
Production. Learn, first off, get rid of everything in writing that's not fun. If you're not having fun in writing, you're doing something wrong that will stop you. You won't make it 30 years. That's the bottom line. The writers who have made it as long as I've been around, Chris has been around, and people of my generation, the George Martins and the things, people like that, we just have fun. We love writing. And when something starts getting in the way of the fun, we clear it out. And stop it or do something else. So that's first things first. So if if you love to write but hate to rewrite, well, then stop rewriting. It's that simple. Just write clean first drafts. And because I loathe any type of rewriting because I've already told myself the story. If you hate to outline because someone somewhere told you must outline, well, then just stop it and start having fun just telling a story, and that's the kind of thing. And I would focus on production. I mean, learn all this other stuff as you go, little bits and pieces here and there, so that suddenly you wake up one morning, 5 years in and go, people are asking me questions about copyright now because I know a lot about it. It's because you've been learning it piecemeal along the way. And that's how it happened with me. I just kind of was always thought, well, this is the basis of everything. I better learn this. And Chris was the same way. Now people come to me to ask about copyright, which is how the Magic Bakery came about, because I couldn't figure out quite how to describe it. And, and so I would focus on production. I'd focus on craft and first make that the highest priority and focus on being prolific. That's, whatever your definition of prolific, being a fast writer, being a prolific writer doesn't mean you type faster. It just means you spend more time in the chair. That's all it is. And if you're having trouble getting to the chair and sitting down and writing stories, step back and have people help you check your language. That you're not your language of what you're writing, the language of what's coming out of your mouth. If you're saying, well, I got to go to work and write. Well, nobody likes to work. I mean, that's not what writing's about. Work is what we do for 8 hours a day, and then we come home so we can go write, and we can write on the weekends, and then we can take time off from work. But if you're calling your writing work, what you're telling your subconscious is this is something you don't want to do. And so therefore, the moment you call your writing work, you stop getting to the chair because you don't want to go there. You don't want to have to go be no fun. So outside of maybe your family where you've got to justify the time you're spending, that sort of stuff, you start thinking of your writing as I'm going to go play. This is my safe place. This is where I have fun. This is where I tell myself stories. So get all of the drudgery and the not fun stuff away from your writing. Don't call it work. Never refer to it as work. I mean, I make a living at fiction writing. My job is to sit alone in a room and make stuff up. That's what I do. And people pay me enormous amounts of money. I have 23, 24 million copies of my books in print. And yet, it's just what I do. And I have fun with it. And so anytime I can get away from other stuff and get over here to my writing computer, I have my writing on a completely different computer with no internet, no nothing on it. It's just basically a big word processor. And it's a big iMac, but it's a big word processor because I have everything turned off. I don't have grammar checker on. I don't have spell checker on because I don't want any of that critical stuff coming in. So I just go and sit down and tell myself a story. And then when I'm done, I release it, get it into print, and tell myself another story. It really is that simple. But I hear writers making it so much harder, and they call it work, and they do this. And the minute you start associating money with writing, then it becomes work in your head, and you have to clear that. I just find it fascinating that I can sit and play, tell myself a story that I want to read, and then people pay me money for it. Wow, that's cool. That's just fun. Who knew?
It's literally living the dream.
It is living. I'm playing.
Yeah.
I don't have a job. I mean, now the business side of it becomes a job at times. There's no doubt that is work at times, and I sometimes put that off because it is work. But the writing part of it, the production part, telling stories part, no, it's just fun. That's just
Sorry, thank you very much. So, where can everybody find out more about you? If they want to, where should they go?
Well, at the moment, I have this writer-based website, which is deanwesleysmith.com. And Wesley is Wesley, Smith.com. That is pretty much writer-based, workshop-based, everything else. I am in the process of creating a fiction site for myself. That will have now. See, I also did for 44 straight months. I did my own monthly magazine called Smith's Monthly, and every month had a brand new novel and had 4 or 5 new short stories in it. Every month, did it for 44 straight months. And then when Chris got so sick, my wife got really, really sick, and we had to move from Oregon down here to Las Vegas and all that. I put the magazine on hiatus, but Smith's Monthly is coming back, and I'm going to be doing that monthly again. So I need a website for that and things like that. But that's basically going to be smithsmonthly.com. DeanWesleySmith.com is the place you can find out links to all of this stuff and all the workshop stuff. And right now I'm writing a book. I write all of my nonfiction books as blog posts first. Every chapter is a blog post. And right now, about once every 3 or 4 days, I'm putting up another chapter of gotta be the hardest topic I've ever written about, and that's trademark for fiction writers. Talk about, it's not something most fiction writers need. It's not like copyright. It's not, I mean, I put the Magic Bakery somewhere back in the past. You can probably find the Magic Bakery on my blog. I wrote all those chapters up there too. I mean, you can find it in book form now too, and in a workshop. But that's what I do. So that's what that blog is. DeanWesleySmith.com.
Well, thank you very much for your time today.